When it comes to making video games into movies, Hollywood doesn't have the best track record. It's kind of been bad. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name's StepsBasic, and welcome back to my community show. So, nice. I really liking this new mic. It's pretty cool. And I try to keep my head going in the proper direction so I don't talk away from it. And I've been really loving the whole thing now. And headphones and everything. Yeah, this is not important. It's a long discussion about how I've been having headphones issues. But anyway, that's not what's important. What's important is today, announcements first. Coming to the end of the original Alan Wake story, but that leaves still the DLC and, of course, American Nightmare. I've already got the DLC. It came with the game that I got, so don't have to buy it. Yay. But apart from that, after we make it through that, then we're going to be starting on The Last of Us 2. Which, honestly, for some reason, I'm not really looking forward to. But you know what? Whatever. I'm going to play it, and I'm going to do my best to enjoy it. And you probably noticed that I started playing a 7 Days to Die map with Bubble Ninja. Had 2 episodes of it this week, and I was working hard on it. Trying to, cut down almost 2 hours worth of live stream all week. And that's what took me so long with the videos and whatnot. But we're going to be trying to do we're going to try to be doing one of them SMP things, and I kind of think that's kind of an interesting idea that I've seen other people doing these days. Incidentally, that's actually kind of leading us, nice segue, into our topic for today, which is stories that make good games / games that make good stories. Now, of course, this is that was a terrible introduction to this. Basically, what I want to talk about today is IPs that I have watched in movies or read in books that I feel would make for a good transition into a video game, and vice versa. Sad part is, most of the things that I can think of when it comes to games that would make a good movie is that they have. I'm not the only one that had that idea. Now, unfortunately, of course, also that when it comes to making video games into movies, Hollywood doesn't have the best track record. It's kind of been bad. But anyway, so let's look at, first of all, now, I know that they're actually discussing this right now, but there was The Last of Us 2 is actually looking at getting or not The Last of Us 2, just The Last of Us, is looking at getting a show adaptation, which I thought sounded kind of neat. And I'm kind of hopeful for it, because that is a really interesting world. Depending on when they set it, it might be post-apocalyptic, might be pre-apocalyptic leading into, but I don't know exactly everything that's going on yet. Also, funny enough, I don't know much of anything about it other than, I've heard the whispers go through the internet. And, they exist. I'm hopeful for it because, well, like I have always said, The Last of Us 1 was easily one of my top 5 games. I'd probably even say, top 3. Mostly because, it's a really good game. But anyway, moving on from that, that was a game that would make a good show, in my opinion, because, for the most part, it is fully action, fully live action thing, I say fully live action, but it's not live action. It's still computer graphics. Ramble. But, the way it plays out in the game is it plays out cinematically. You go from one section to another. Granted, you can explore a little bit, but it's not completely wide open and whatnot to lend itself poorly to an on-screen performance. So, arguably, the medium from game to video to movie to show wouldn't be too much of a stretch because it's already pretty cinematic in its own right. Which actually brings me to my second one, which is actually, funny enough, Alan Wake. I think Alan Wake could make a good show because of the simple fact that, like with The Last of Us, the way it plays out is very cinematically. The only difference between the two is Alan Wake has a lot of open and empty space in it, which kind of slows things down. But of course, cut those parts out and go from plot point to plot point, encounter to encounter, and show the path through the woods. Really could lend itself fairly easily to a show or a movie. Well, I'd say Alan Wake would probably make better for a movie than a show, due to its brevity, of course, and location. It's all on location in Bright Falls, Washington. So it's not like you're traveling between state to state or transitioning through months of activity. It's all within a week, or 2 weeks technically. So it could easily make do for just a one shot movie deal. I think that could work out with some sequels. All right, so those are two games. Let's talk about stories and whatnot that could be transferred into video games. Now, again, the same issue that we run into here when it comes to video games to movies is that going backwards has often happened as well, depending on depending on how big the release was. Most games, or most of the superhero movies had accompanying video games released with them, and more often than not, the video games were horrible, not entertaining at all. Just kind of like with the exception of like Spider-Man 2. I think that one was probably the best superhero movie to game adaptation, and that's directly from the movie. I think, I don't remember. Anyway, luckily enough, they stopped doing that. They stopped releasing video game accompaniments, which is good. The tricky part about looking at movies and shows and converting them to video games comes in, obviously, determining what types of games would be true to the story. Because you could do open world action adventure, you can do hacky slashy types, war deployment sort of turn-based strategy games. Anyway, yeah, but you get what I mean when I'm talking about that. Is like, what type of game would make for this show / movie to be set in. So let's look at one of the more recent shows I've been watching. I've been watching Eureka. Now, Eureka, I don't really consider it a good transition from video game from show to video game. Because if you've ever seen Eureka, it's about a sheriff in a small town that happens to be run by geniuses, and science tends to go amok. And it makes for good episodic content in a show, but when talking about releasing it into video game form, it's like, I'm not really sure how well that could work. Maybe you could develop a singular story for it and just have it like an open world action adventure type of game and that sort of thing. Like, maybe the town gets overrun by something. But, you see what I mean, though. Converting that to a show, you would need, like, open world elements, be able to explore Eureka and into global dynamics, as well as, some sort of encounter, some sort of a bad guys wandering around style. I can make that work. But no. I often have, I don't know, fantasies, delusions, whatever you want to call it, when I'm watching a movie or a show where they develop parties and whatnot, and groups of people and whatnot. I always kind of imagine them in the style of RPGs. So it's like considering The Walking Dead as an RPG was one of my fun things to do. But of course, like I said before, they kind of made that into several video games, and it's like, I'm not even sure if I'd really want them to make it into a video game, considering the source material. Now, don't get me wrong, I like the Telltale Walking Dead games, but the other Walking Dead games kind of left a lot to be desired. Mostly because, like I said, they kind of did it wrong. But at the same time, when it comes to RPGs, it's not just a matter of, like, can we survive? No, it's more a matter of, let's seek out the big final boss and destroy it. And when you're thinking about Of course, I'm thinking JRPGs so much more than Western RPGs. But then you start thinking about, in The Walking Dead, how could you convert The Walking Dead into a JRPG? How are we going to save the world from the zombie virus? Of course, one could argue that The Walking Dead would make a good survival horror game. Again, see the attempts that have been made. Along the lines of Resident Evil, which could be interesting. But at the same time, it still leads to the question of what's the end game. As much as I like The Walking Dead and the idea of playing it as some sort of a video game, with the exception, of course, of the Walking Dead that is available, is intriguing, but at the same time, it always begs the question of where do we go? What do we do? And that sort of thing. And that's one of the things that always interrupts my ideals when it comes to playing video games as, stuff. Movies as video games, shows as video games. And there's been a good number of the ones, especially the Stranger Things. I've been trying to decide how that would work as a game. Of course, they actually released a Stranger Things video game too. I think it was a top-down sort of 80s style retro gamer game, and I imagine it more of a survival horror style. You take control of each of the players, a la shoot. Why can't I remember anything today? My brain is a futz. The Siren games, kind of like that. You're switching characters in between, and you can discover mysteries and find your way to the lab and everything. That'd be kind of neat. I could work with that. Of course, I guess technically, if you want to think about it, a lot of the games that you play don't necessarily have to have some sort of an end game, as it were. Now, of course, with games, you want a conclusion. Like with movies, you can leave it dangling, like, oh, maybe not. But in a video game, if you spent the last 40 to 60 hours playing the game and you get to the end and it's not a satisfying conclusion, then it's frustrating. I acknowledge this. So it's like you always want some sort of an end game. And it's like when I was younger, I used to think about converting The Stand to a video game. Now, I liked the book. I read the book when I was younger, much younger. And it's been a while since I read it. I always thought it might make for an interesting RPG, because in the end, you have the final culmination, the final battle with Randall Flagg and everything, and I thought that might be an interesting thing, because in RPGs, JRPGs, and whatnot, you can have a scripted to lose fight, and I used to play it out in my head, all 8-bit and 16-bit when the graphics got a bit better. I used to play it out in my head, like, how would this work? Oh, Stu meets up with Glenn, and then Stu and Glenn become, party members together. And in certain parts of the game, maybe include a little bit more encounters with wild animals or Randall Flagg's minions and whatnot. And, that can make for interesting level up mechanics and whatnot, and finding items. And nowadays, now that I think about it, you maybe think about it along the lines of a Mass Effect game, because now I have better references, because I was thinking about it when I was a kid as JRPGs, because that's what I mostly played, and now I can think about it in a different fashion, like a Mass Effect series where your choices actually will determine your character's outcome. That could be neat. And it's still at the very end, you still have the battle with Flag and everything. I'm going to pitch this idea to Stephen King, see if he likes it. Anyway, but yes, let me hear some of your ideas. What sorts of, now if you're going to convert a movie to a video game, I want to know what type of video game, because you can't just say, yeah, let's play this game as a video game. Okay, now what? How are we going to play it? What's the type of game? But let me know what types of conversions you'd like to see, which way, one or the other, in which direction. That might be interesting, and I'd like to hear about that. But anyway, apart from all that, thank you all so much for joining me for this episode of the Steps Basic Gaming Community Show. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and if you did, please go poke that like button for me. If you'd like to see more from me, make sure to hit that subscribe button. And of course, as always, you are more than welcome to leave a comment in the comment section down below, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Hey, when I can, if I can, you know all that jazz. And tune in next time as we carry on with other topics. And until then, good night.